One of the works that C.S. Lewis is most known for is his Chronicles of Narnia series. The most famous, the most familiar to many in that series is the book The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And in that book, 4 children, 4 siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, venture into the land of Narnia, where they help deal with the White Witch and bring peace to the land once again. Now, after the children have returned to their own world, they get to live out their lives for a year before they're suddenly pulled back into Narnia in the story of the next book in the series, Prince Caspian. And in Prince Caspian, the children find that they are tasked with finding Prince Caspian and helping him to regain his rightful place on the throne of Narnia and once again to bring peace to that land. Now, there comes a point in their journey where Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy find themselves at a split in the road. One path goes up further and further into the forest, while the other path goes down by a river right there next to it. And the children decide to take what seems to be, what by all accounts is the logical path to take, the one by the river, to help them on the way. Now, Lucy, the youngest, in the corner of her eye, sees Aslan. Aslan, who is the great lion, who is the one that helped lead the charge against the White Witch, who is the stand-in for God, for Jesus in the series. So Lucy, out of the corner of her eye, sees Aslan. And instead of being on this path going down by the river, he's up on this path that leads through the forest. And Lucy looks at her siblings and tells them that Aslan is there. But the rest of their party doesn't see Aslan. So instead, they take the path they originally were going to go on, the one that leads down by the river. And even though that seems like the best path, it turns out that it's not. It turns out to be much harder than they expected. And they end up wasting an entire day of travel without really getting anywhere. So that night, as they prepared camp, Lucy feels this pull and finds herself going to this place. And in this place, she sees Aslan right in front of her. And Aslan says to her that there's not much time and that they need to leave immediately. And Lucy immediately starts to talk about her siblings and how they should have listened to her and how it is their fault that they are in this mess. During this time that Lucy's saying all these things, Aslan is silent. And it's in that silence that Lucy begins to realize something. Her siblings aren't the only ones in the wrong. She is as well. Because Lucy simply could have gone and traveled the right path on her own. Because she wouldn't have been alone in doing so. She would have had Aslan there to guide her. And as she continues to speak, and as she continues to learn the truth from Aslan's silences, she realizes that going forward, that if her siblings will still not go the path with her, that she must take this journey in following Aslan on her own. Now, fortunately, all is well, and even though it takes a while for Lucy's siblings to see Aslan in front of them, they do still follow her. Eventually, they make their way to Prince Caspian, and all is right in the land of Narnia. Now, what Lucy learns is that she is not always good. She doesn't always do the correct or just thing. The only time she does so is when she is following God. And that is mirrored in our readings today. We first see the two sides, the two paths, if you will, in the Tanakh, the Old Testament. One of these paths that we hear of in the book of the prophet Jeremiah, we see the wandering that the ancient Israelites have done away from God. We also see in our song, our response to the prophet, a path that envisions a time where we will dwell in the happiness of our Lord. And that happiness comes from something that Jeremiah reminds us of, the prophet, not our Jeremiah here. And that's that God protects us in times of trouble, just as Lucy was protected by Aslan. We hear of this same protection in 2 Timothy, where the writer of that letter reminds us that God, standing by with us in trouble, can even save us from the lion's mouth. Now, these two paths, the one of following God and the one from wandering away from God, takes an unexpected turn in what we see in our gospel today. In the parable that Jesus lays out for us, we see two people. We see the Pharisee, we see the tax collector. Now, the Pharisees were seen as the epitome of following God. They kept a strict observance of the law, the very law that was handed down to Moses by God. And they modeled their lives based on this law and trying to do all that God said, trying to do all that was good in this world. Tax collectors, on the other hand, were viewed very poorly in Jesus' day. Maybe even more poorly than we sometimes see the IRS in our day and age. Tax collectors were people who were commissioned by the Roman Empire to collect people's taxes. But what the Roman Empire did is just tell them, this is how much you need to collect. there was no other means in collecting taxes for the collectors to have any sort of livelihood. So one of the things they did in order to have their own money was to punch up the taxes a little bit, get a little bit more from those they were collecting from. And because of the laws of the Roman Empire, no one could do anything about that. You had to pay whatever the tax collectors told you had to pay. And some would charge quite a bit. And so the ancient Israelites would have looked at tax collectors as not only working with the enemy, with their oppressors, the Roman Empire, but also taking away from their own personal livelihoods. And yet something interesting happens in the temple in Jesus' parable. We see the Pharisee, the person that we thought was supposed to do everything just and good. And he's there praying to God and merely just lifting up himself and self-interest, puffing up himself and his goodness before God. The tax collector, on the other hand, is very humble and simply asks that God have mercy on him, a sinner. This might remind us of what Paul says in Romans. We have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That's true whether we are scum of the earth, like tax collectors, or if we are seemingly righteous, like the Pharisee. It's even true for someone who is spiritually attuned, as what we see with Lucy. Someone who comes to see her own flaws, thanks to Aslan. The truth is that we are all broken. For some of us, we can see that physically in ourselves. Whether we've broken a bone, have a scar from surgery, or even a replacement joint in our bodies. For all of us, all we have to do is look at the hardships and cruelties we have faced from others, that sometimes we have afflicted on others, to see and know that there's something wrong in us, something wrong in the world around us. Jesus, in his parable, makes us painfully aware of our shortcomings, just as Aslan does for Lucy. And yet, seeing those shortcomings is exactly what we need. When Jesus ends his parable, he tells us that the tax collector is the one who goes home justified. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all who humble themselves will be exalted. Before we can choose the road that leads back to God, we first need to come to terms with our own brokenness. Lucy, though spiritually sound, had to come to this experience for herself. The tax collector, a more obviously sinful person, needed to witness this for herself too. The only one who fails to understand is the Pharisee, the one who everyone in Jesus' time would have seen as good and upstanding. No matter how good we think we are broken. We all have weaknesses. We all sin and fall short of the glory of God. Instead of puffing ourselves up like the Pharisee, we need to see our limitations and realize that God, and only God, can help us make our way back so that we can dwell once again with our Lord.